big brown cloud in the city, and the countryside's a sin, and the price of life's too high to give up. Gotta come down again. Worldwide war's over and done, and the dream of peace comes true. We'll all be drinking free bubble up, eating that rainbow stew.
Greetings and welcome to Rainbow Stew. There's been a lot going on the last couple of weeks. We have a presidential election not 2 weeks away. We have a Supreme Court appointment that's being battled over locally. We've had a battle over mask mandate for the city of Manchester. So you might not have heard about the latest 40 Days for Life campaign, and we'd like to kind of fill you in on that. And in fact, you might never have heard of a 40 Days for Life campaign, even though it's been going on for some years. And it doesn't make the front page of the newspaper. But if you're attentive, and you may have seen, if you're driving up Pennacook Street, you may have seen some people standing out in front of what is the Planned Parenthood clinic on Pennacook Street near the intersection with Elm. And you might see some people standing there with signs, and just a few people at a time, or might even be one or two at a time. And they are there to oppose frankly, the slaughter that's going on, not only here in Manchester, but nationally, and as we will see globally, the slaughter known as abortion, euphemistically known as choice or reproductive health. And I submit as positively Orwellian to call slaughtering of innocent unborn children a health measure. But words get abused and stretched into all kinds of meanings. So we have here today a spokesman for the 40 Days for Life campaign in Manchester, who is Ellen Kolb.
Hi.
And we welcome you, Ellen.
Thanks, Jeff.
And we're going to talk for the next whatever time we have left of our half hour, about 26, 22 minutes, about 40 Days for Life. And I wondered, since you're a spokesman for the organization and I'm not, the organization, the campaign, if you could kind of give an overview of what 40 Days for Life is all about.
Sure. 40 Days for Life is a campaign of prayer and public witness and community outreach that is attempting to help bring an end to abortion nonviolently through prayer, through building relationships, and by serving the people both who work at the facility and the people who are going there, possibly seeking an abortion. And this began in one location in Texas more than 10 years ago now. And right now, the campaign that's going on is in more than 500 cities around the world.
That's right. It is international. Not certainly not just local and not just international. Mm-hmm. How long have we had one in Manchester, do you know?
I am not sure exactly. I became involved about 5 years ago, started small, but now there's one in Manchester. Currently in the campaign there's one in Greenland as well, outside the Lovering Center, and sometimes we have one in Concord outside the Equality Center. So New Hampshire can have up to 3 at a time.
What is it called now? The Equality Center?
The Equality Center.
So formerly known as the Feminist Health Center. Yeah, again, the use of that word health is stunning. I refer, well, never mind what I call it. Probably best to stay away from that. So you've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, but you've been involved in pro-life longer than that.
I've been involved in pro-life work in New Hampshire, both in advocacy and in service, for about 30 years. Yeah. Back when my kids were little and I used to bring them to Concord to hearings, well, now they're all grown and Mom's still going.
Do you, there is, as you mentioned, that March for Life in Concord every year. There's also one in, a huge one in Washington every year. Have you been to that?
I have been to that most of the past 5 years, and periodically before that. That's been going on since January of 1974. It'll be interesting to see if the current circumstances will affect next January's, because the most encouraging thing about the march is the number of young people who travel on buses, overnight, 2-day trips to come to D.C. How many students are going to be doing that in January? I don't know.
With this pandemic
but
going on, that's right.
The march is going on because January 22nd is the anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision.
And tragically, it'll be, I believe, 47 years.
Yeah. And we're not done.
Yeah.
We're not done. The decision stands, the decision's expanded, and even if a pandemic interferes with a march in Washington, we're going to be in our own home states doing what we can.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of actually a rather, at least potentially large conflict between measures taken to contain or halt the spread of the coronavirus and the basic freedoms written into the Constitution, most notably the First Amendment, protecting the freedom of religion, the free exercise thereof, and the freedom of speech, the right of the people to peacefully assemble and protest.
Well, so far, 40 Days for Life has been, in New Hampshire, has not been disturbed by that. Obviously, the prayers go on outdoors. We have been encouraged to maintain distance from each other. That's generally not a problem.
Do you wear the masks?
If I'm out there and I'm close to someone, I do. If I'm alone, I don't.
Okay. But you're out there to talk to people, aren't you, as they come in or exit?
People who are comfortable and trained talking to people going in and out of the building do so. I prefer to stand and pray and let people approach me, as one day a Pennacook Street neighbor did. I'm usually there. The shift I usually choose is 7 a.m. before the facility opens. It's a residential street, of course. People are coming and going to work and to school. And one day, a woman came down from the other side of Chestnut and walked up to me, and I thought, okay. Sometimes we get people driving by shouting unhelpful things. She approached me and said hi and said, I wish someone had been there for me 30 years ago. Not at that specific location. But she said, I just wish I'd had someone to talk to.
I think there's a lot of that going on, and yet, even some people even some women who have had abortions and have come to regret it, unfortunately feel blocked by that guilt they feel over that choice that they made years back. And also because it is so popular and common to say, don't force your moral conclusions on others.
And sometimes people are put off by people who've been outside facilities and may be calling names. They may be threatening violence. They may be holding what I call the bloody baby pictures. Others call them graphic images, but come on, we're talking bloody baby pictures. 40 Days for Life is intentionally not about that. It is not about that.
What's the objection to telling it like it is visually and showing those graphic pictures of aborted infants?
Because listening like it is important. Generally, a woman going in, and even the woman who works in the facility, or a man, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They know what they're approaching. But who asks to listen to them, listen to their stories? Who says, what do you need? The Pennacook Pregnancy Center was founded by local women right around the corner. What do you need? Do you need a few minutes to sit down and think about this? Is the rent a problem? Is clothes a problem? If something I put up or hold is going to prevent a person from coming and approaching and having that conversation, I'm not going to do it. 40 Days for Life is not about that, and that's one of the reasons I'm so attracted to it. I have yelled in the past, in my misspent youth. I have been more willing to do more confrontational things, and the older I get, after 30 years here, I need to do more listening while not giving up for 1 minute the understanding that the mother and the child matter.
Do you speak sometimes to the practitioners, the abortionists, going in and out of the...
In Manchester, they are absolutely committed to not talking to us. When I'm there at 7, I'm there while they come in at 7:45, and it is obvious that the directive is don't even exchange a look.
I know you you want to be sensitive and caring and compassionate in dealing with a woman, often a young woman, confused, frightened, coerced maybe by a husband or boyfriend, and you don't want to be harsh. I think though, if you see a practitioner going in, the biblical verse that comes to my mind is in Psalm 5, "The man of blood and treachery the Lord abominates."
I'll leave that abomination to the Lord. I think of 40 Days for Life, as the founders have called it, the last sign of hope, the first sign of mercy. Whether you're going in or out of that building, whether you are a patient, a client, you're not a patient if you're getting an abortion, you're a client.
You mean it isn't a health measure?
Well, if it were a health measure, there'd be a law in New Hampshire requiring that someone have medical credentials in order to perform an abortion. There is no such law, which makes me wonder when someone calls it a health measure. But you're going to show some information about 40 Days for Life soon, and 2 of the women in there, we might talk about them later, they worked in abortion facilities. And it was the people with 40 Days for Life who were persistently at their facilities that helped them to make the decision for where they are today.
All right, well, let's do that. Let's take a look at a film clip we have, a video of the national effort, a little bit of the history of 40 Days for Life.
"40 Days is modeled on Scripture. It's 40 days of prayer and fasting, and you can't go wrong with that. I mean, that is a model for success based on God's Word.
I think that's what made it so approachable for me, to see that they truly were prayerful and peaceful people.
Today, we face a crisis like none other in history. It's a crisis that is hurting women, a crisis that is dividing families, a crisis that's dehumanizing the most innocent among us. And that crisis is abortion. Abortion now has become the leading cause of death throughout our entire world. Every year, 42 million children die from abortion around the globe. And right here in the United States, every single year, 1.2 million innocent children perish from abortion. Abortions don't happen in the White House. They don't happen in the Capitol building or in the Supreme Court. Abortions happen right where we live. They happen in our communities. They happen in our neighborhoods. They happen around the corner from our schools and around the corner from our churches. In 1998, Planned Parenthood opened an abortion center in Bryan College Station. People of faith rallied against it, but in time the office was built and Planned Parenthood opened. In 2004, 4 people gathered around an old wooden table for an hour of prayer. During that hour of prayer, they found themselves drawn to the time frame of 40 days. As that hour of prayer progressed, the 4 individuals felt themselves called to launch a 40-day campaign of prayer and fasting, community outreach, and a constant peaceful vigil to end abortion. Finally, they gave their new project a name: 40 Days for Life. In the years to come, communities across the United States launched their own campaigns. In 2007, the original 40 Days for Life leaders launched their first ever nationally coordinated 40 Days for Life campaign, spanning 89 cities in 33 states. Before long, campaigns had been hosted in all 50 states. And then, the world came knocking. Hundreds of cities in dozens of countries across all 6 populated continents have now hosted 40 Days for Life campaigns. Volunteer leaders standing together in prayerful solidarity. Many cultures, many time zones, many languages, but one shared language of prayer. 40 Days for Life has contributed to a groundswell of pro-life support worldwide. Abortion centers where campaigns have been hosted have closed their doors forever, including the very location where 40 Days for Life first began in 2004, the now closed Planned Parenthood abortion facility in Bryan College Station. The building where thousands of lives were taken has been redeemed and now serves as the international headquarters for 40 Days for Life. More than 750,000 people have participated in 40 Days for Life campaigns, including post-abortive women and men, people who have since found healing from their abortion experiences, and also former workers who have left the abortion industry. People like Sue Thayer. Sue was the manager of a Planned Parenthood facility in Storm Lake, Iowa, and after leaving her job at Planned Parenthood, had a time of healing, and then decided to lead a 40 Days for Life campaign outside her former workplace.
Here I was pro-choice and the leader of Planned Parenthood, and now suddenly, I've crossed over and I'm leading the other charge, so to speak. And sometimes people think I work for 40 Days for Life, and I don't, but I am their biggest fan. They have done amazing things across the country, not only to stop abortion, but to bring people together, in the pro-life movement, and, to open dialogue and get things going. And it has truly been one of the greatest blessings of my life.
Sue's facility was one of dozens of abortion centers that closed following a 40 Days for Life campaign. Ramona Trevino began questioning her job as the manager of a Planned Parenthood when the first 40 Days for Life happened outside of her place.
I look back and think, what would it have been like if someone was not there the day that I walked out and asked for prayers? If they hadn't been there, I wouldn't be here. So, that's what you have to remember, is that your presence is necessary, even though you may not think that it is.
Ramona and the other workers that have had conversions and left their jobs show us that with God, all things are possible, even ending abortion right where you live. Now more than ever, there's renewed hope as record numbers of abortion facilities close down, as Christian pregnancy help centers outnumber abortion facilities 5-1. There's hope as post-abortive women are sharing their testimonies of how abortion hurt them to invite others to find the healing that they have discovered, but also to inspire people to get involved in the pro-life movement to help women. And also, polls now show that a majority of people reject abortion, especially young people. 40 Days for Life is an invitation to trust God, to take a leap of faith, to join the nearly 750,000 people who have participated in this effort. You can literally save lives where you live. God has given us a reason to have tremendous hope. Now it's time for us to trust Him. It's time for us to put our faith into action. And it's time for us to take this moment in history and make it the beginning of the end of abortion. Find the location nearest you at 40daysforlife.com.
There's an awful lot in that brief video, but I think the number one thing that jumped out at me when I watched it is the number of abortions that have been performed globally. I believe it was something like 240 million.
It's beyond counting.
Yeah.
Beyond accounting.
It is. And I mean, getting statistics on this is probably a difficult task. And we can't verify down to the umpteenth one, which, whether the number is exactly correct, but anything like that, anything near that, should shock the conscience of people. And if that doesn't shock your conscience, I wonder if your conscience is capable of being shocked by anything. But of course, as Uncle Joe Stalin said, one death is a statistic, one death is a tragedy, a million are a statistic. So we get inured by this, and people, just kind of go about their daily lives without even thinking about it.
And the path people take from that position to wanting to defend life, it can vary from person to person. You heard from Sue Thayer in that video. I've met her. Her first what moment came when she was in charge of a Planned Parenthood facility and she was directed to start allowing webcam abortions, which is remote dispensation of an abortive drug. And she thought, that's not medically, we don't have the medical knowledge to do this right. And she was told to do it anyway. And that just did not sit right with her. She was concerned about her patient's health. From there, she became more open to the message going on out on her sidewalk. I have a friend who left a job with Planned Parenthood in Boston on Commonwealth Ave, and she told me, those bloody baby pictures, nothing gave us a greater sense of solidarity.
Uh-huh.
And when I left, I knew I just wasn't going to be one of those crazy pro-lifers. But then she said over the next couple of years, the love she received, the acceptance she received, she said, I was afraid to tell people where I'd worked. And I found I didn't have to be afraid. Listening, patience, prayer got the job done.
And you mentioned some of the questions you ask people about what their needs are. And I know just about a block up the street at the corner of Pennacook and Chestnut, or near the corner, I think a little bit more on Chestnut, is the, what is it?
It's the Pennacook Pregnancy Center. And that was founded by women who saw a need and were determined to meet it. Nobody came from the outside and said, will somebody please set this up on our behalf? It's local women doing what's needed.
And by the way, one of the objections that we often hear to the pro-life movement is that, well, men are trying to tell women what to do with their own bodies. I find that most of the people, I would say a majority of the people in the pro-life movement are women.
That's certainly been my experience through the years. Once you accept that there are no disposable human lives, you stop worrying about the demographic breakdown out on the sidewalk. But I can tell you, most of the people I've worked with over 30 years have been women.
And it was 7 men on the U.S. Supreme Court in a 7-2 decision that created...
Credit where it's due.
created this mythical right to abortion that was located somewhere in the penumbras formed by emanations of other rights that are in the Constitution, though abortion is nowhere mentioned, and I'm sure it was not on the minds of the delegates to the various state conventions that ratified the 14th Amendment, guaranteeing equal protection under law.
I doubt very much that any of the 7 men who signed on to Roe could envision where it would be today.
What a slaughterhouse it has been. That's true. In fact, Warren Burger, the Chief Justice, wrote in his concurring opinion that this is not a decision for abortion on demand. Well, that's certainly what it became.
And 10 years later, 10 or so years later, in one of the decisions based on it, I think Akron, Burger said, okay, this is taking a direction that's not quite what we anticipated.
Well, one of the things that Ms. Kolb does, in addition to her activities in support of 40 Days for Life, is maintaining a blog.
Yes.
And I'm very computer semi-literate. I don't even know the difference between a blog and a website. But she has a blog called Leaven for the Loaf, which has a lot of pro-life information on it. And I know you're up at the State House a lot, aren't you?
Oh, yes, because it's I think it's very important to keep track of the legislation and also to meet the people who make that legislation.
And one of the egregious things, one of many egregious things that our legislators did a few years back was they passed a buffer zone requiring the people to do what the folks in 40 Days for Life are doing, be 20 feet away from the entrance to the Planned Parenthood facility. Now, 20 feet would either put you way down the street or...
I'd be across the street on in front of somebody's home.
Well, actually, if you took just 20 feet literally, you'd be out in the middle of the road, I think. So you'd have to be across the street. So then if you want to communicate with the people that you're trying to communicate with, which, again, is your constitutional right, you'd have to shout at them, again, in a residential neighborhood. So that's probably what they like, the pro-aborts.
Well, remember, Jack, 2 things. First of all, that law has never been enforced because the people who would be inclined to use it know perfectly well they'll be in court 5 minutes after they enforce it. And second, 40 Days for Life has taken place in other cities that do have buffer zones in effect. You can push them 20, 30 feet out of the way. The prayer will still happen. 40 Days for Life is not a political organization. They will work with the laws that are there. What they won't do is go away.
And also, a similar buffer zone was was enacted in Massachusetts, and the U.S. Supreme Court, by a 9-0 decision, said that was unconstitutional.
That's right, because the state had not tried less restrictive means to control behavior on the sidewalk. And there had been no violence.
And you've been at this and involved in this for a long time. Is there any reason, did they have any cause to seek a buffer zone? Has there been any violence, any disturbing of the peace by the people who've been out there witnessing?
Spokesperson for Planned Parenthood of Northern New England said there had been 60 complaints, patient complaints, in the year before the zone was enacted. None of them had resulted in a police report, but the legislators were persuaded by the 60 claimed. But you know what? We're there anyway.
Well, they're easily persuaded. And I maintain, and you don't have to agree or disagree with this, but I maintain that the people in the legislature who supported that measure, including a couple of prominent senators from Manchester, the Dean of the Senate, Lou D'Alessandro, and Senate President Donna Soucy.
Chief sponsor.
Are what I call EBORs, enemies of the Bill of Rights. So, they don't require a buffer zone if, let's say, a union asks me, the American Federation of State, Municipal, and County Employees, wants to hold a demonstration in front of City Hall. There's no buffer zone there. So, you can't discriminate on the basis of content when you're putting limitations on the freedom of speech.
Well, peaceful, prayerful, no matter what the laws are, 40 Days for Life finds a way to work within them. 40daysforlife.com/Manchester is the way to find out more about the campaign that's going on here. Twice a year, 40 days each time. And you can go to 40daysforlife.com to look up any location. You just might find one close to where you live.
There is one, recap that again, there's one in Concord, one in Nashua.
None in Nashua yet.
Oh, okay.
And this season, there's not one in Concord. That could change, as I said, twice a year. One begins on Ash Wednesday, and then the one in the fall ends on the first Sunday of Advent.
Okay, so it's 40 days is because why? The biblically, 40 days.
It's
Jesus
a biblical
was fasting,
sample.
yeah.
And it's a biblical sample of commitment, of time, and of preparation. So it seems to come well recommended
by the highest authorities. So is 40 Days for Life a religious movement?
It was founded by Christians. It is based on Christian teaching. However, the tone of a local one, you might find more Catholics in a Manchester one and more evangelicals down in another area. The tone of it definitely depends on the locality. It was 40 Days for Life was founded by evangelical Christians.
Well, that's a good point, because some people still maintain, after all these years, that it's simply, and all of the involvement over the years by evangelicals and others, that it's a Catholic thing, that the Catholics are trying to impose their religion on others. Not true, but anyway, we will talk more about this in the future. And this goes on till when? November 1, is it?
This goes on, yes, the election is the 3rd, so it would be November 1st.
Okay.
November 1st. So 40daysforlife.com/Manchester. Learn more, contact them, and I hope to see you there.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for watching. Tune in next week for another episode of Rainbow Stew.